In today's video, we continue our journey to the finished Batman Returns Danny DeVito penguin statue by painting the Penguin Commandos. After priming, I started the paint job with ivory white. By the way, I used Emperor penguins as a reference, not King penguins. And after saying the word penguin 4 times in the first 2 sentences, I promise it'll get better. The second step was to slowly build a gradient with yellow at his neck and chest. Then for the cheeks, I used gold yellow followed by hot orange to create the color transition on the side of his neck. And then I used masking putty to cover up the neck and paint the head black. And when I removed the masking putty, the characteristic color pattern was already done. I only needed to clean up the edge a bit with the paintbrush and a toothpick, since you never can avoid to have any overspray. Then I packed the 2 guys up in masking putty again and painted their armors and bodies with tire black. Again cleaning up the lines with a paintbrush afterwards. And since I had tire black in my airbrush anyway, I also used it to create a highlight on top of the beaks. Then I did the border where the grey part of their feathers meet the white part. I did struggle there a bit, since my cheap airbrush gave me a hard time, but you'll see me struggle even more in a second. With masking tape, I recreated the shape of their beaks, that is orangey, and then used bone white and afterwards elf skin tone to paint those. Removing the overspray afterwards with a toothpick. Then for their eyes I used burnt umber, just to have a slight variation to the black head. And now comes the part I struggle with the most for those 2 guys, that blackish thin line. My airbrush either didn't put out enough, or any color, or it was directly too much. So I had to go back and forth a lot, and Q-tips and toothpicks were my best friends here to remove the paint. But remember that this will only work when you varnish the underlying colors beforehand. But eventually I got it done and moved on to their armor that I painted in segments because it was just easier than to mask off everything in one step. Then I moved over to the rockets that I base coated with white, and then initially I wanted to mask the white part and use the airbrush for the red, but masking would have taken ages, so I decided to just use the paintbrush. For the fins and nose cone I used black as a base color and then put chainmail silver on top. Then I added a few details to the feet with light grey. Afterwards I glued the rocket holder to their backs with 5-minute epoxy resin and weathered the rockets with a black oil wash. Once that was dry, I glued the rockets in place with super glue. Then for the final details I used pastel and painted along the armor parts so that the feathers would look dirtier where the armor parts would have contact with them. Next I toned down the light grey on the feet with a black acrylic wash and also weathered the armor, but with black oil wash again. And finally I used brown oil color to create the effect of rust for all the rivets, and after painting it I used a Q-tip soaked with white spirit to tone the color down. And then the penguins were done. In the next video we will finish the statue with Penguin's body and base, so stay tuned and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already.